Like many print reporters, Russell Carollo's journalistic career has included many stops across the country, from the Daily Times in Slidell near his home in Lacombe to the Texarkana Gazette, then to Jackson, Mississippi and the Clarion Ledger, the Dayton Daily News in Ohio, the Los Angeles Times, the Spokesman Review in Spokane, Washington, and most recently, the Sacramento Bee. Nowadays, Carollo can be found shoveling snow off the front porch of his ranch-style home west of Pueblo, Colorado. It's definitely a quiet setting for this accomplished writer whose third-floor office is adorned with awards and honors.
I wanted to be a writer, just a writer. I didn't know, everybody wanted to be Ernest Hemingway, and so I just wanted to be a writer. And then journalism was the only practical way to practice to be a writer. And then the journalism part, the fun of journalism started to kick in after I started doing journalism.
Carollo says his LSU journalism degree, coupled with his work on the LSU Daily Reville, paved the way for his acclaimed career. That, and one journalism professor in particular.
First day I walked into journalism school ever at LSU, the first class I walked into, it was in the old building and it was pretty hot. It was September, and it was late. The professor was late. We're all sitting there, full class, 35, 40 people maybe, and this old guy walks through the front door, appeared to be an old guy to us. His clothes were pretty rumpled, and his hair was messed up. He was a little bit overweight, and he moved over to the windows and started opening the windows. And I said to myself, the janitor got here before the professor, Turned out to be, of course, I learned later the guy was the best professor I've ever had in journalism. He was an incredible journalist professor. He encouraged us all, and I'm not sure some of us would have made it without Jim Feddersen, the way he inspired us and taught us that, we didn't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the world. In some cases, to be a journalist, you just had to be determined, and I think he encouraged us in that regard.
In the early 1980s, there was an abundance of news. A new governor, a new president, new chancellor, and LSU was in the Final Four. Russell Carollo was gathering and writing as much news as he could get his hands on.
1981 staff in the spring may have been the most talented in the history of the Reville, and it had to do with the editorial staff. Alex Martin was the editor. He went on to Newsday and he won a Pulitzer. James O'Byrne was the managing editor. He won a Pulitzer at the Times-Picayune. And the star reporter was one Russell Carollo, who was prolific. He sometimes had 3 bylines on the same page, on the front page, and he won a Pulitzer. So
Carollo parlayed his journalism degree and his love of writing into a gratifying and exemplary career of investigative reporting.
He's one of the best reporters I've ever known.
Jeff Neesmith worked alongside Carollo when they both wrote for the Cox newspaper chain. They were awarded the 1998 Pulitzer Prize for National Affairs for their reporting that disclosed dangerous flaws and mismanagement in the military healthcare system.
In the military, it's a very unusual system of medicine, in that the doctors in the military aren't required to be licensed in the state where they practice, which is highly unusual. The other anomaly about military medicine is that it's very difficult to sue, virtually impossible really, to sue a doctor as an individual in the military. And soldiers are even precluded from suing even if they cut the wrong leg off.
In order to do the hard-hitting, time-consuming story on military medicine, Carollo had to draw upon all of his journalistic abilities, in particular his tenacity and patience.
Well, there's a law called the Federal Freedom of Information Act that is supposed to allow citizens of this country access to information from the government, but the law is violated on a daily and an hourly basis by federal agencies. So it's very difficult. In several cases we had to sue them, and many cases we had to, of course, we had to appeal almost every case, and then we had to threaten them with attorneys over and over again before they would release records.
I wouldn't be surprised if he knows more about the Freedom of Information Act than Obama, who was a constitutional lawyer.
And as I said in the email, I'm a journalist, and I can show you I've already obtained a number of documents.
Debunking myths, uncovering waste, and disclosing facts that many don't want the public to know, that is what drives Russell Carollo. That and his love for writing.
If you're convinced that what you're looking into is incredibly interesting and the information is fascinating, then yeah, that can keep you going. Yeah, and that you're trying to right a wrong, or you're trying to expose something that really shouldn't be going on. Yeah, that can motivate you.
He can smell a story from across town, or see it in the gibberish of a screen full of computer data, where most people wouldn't begin to know it's there.
The good news for special projects writers is that you aren't required to be in the newsroom every day. You can watch a herd of elk cross your property some 900 miles away from your employer. The bad news is that in today's newspaper industry, jobs like Carollo's are fading fast.
Handwriting's not just on the wall. We're being laid off every day. More journalists are being laid off. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like this, and I don't even know people who are much older than me who've ever seen anything like this before in journalism.
In fact, Carollo was let go by the Sacramento Bee last September. Now he's looking for work. But newspapers aren't interested in investigative reporting anymore, and that doesn't bode well for either Carollo or the country.
The real scary thing is not just the jobs, it's what about democracy? Who's going to be watching the government? We are the people who watch the government, and the people that are getting laid off first are people like me, the people who spend an inordinate amount of time looking into the government, because we're the people who cost the most money, we're the people who don't write as much as other people, we're the first people to go. And I'm sure the government is having a party right now thinking about all the people who aren't watching them right now. It's absolutely amazing.
For a young man from St. Tammany Parish, Russell Carollo has made quite a name for himself. He's put in the time and done the work many reporters would balk at, and now another award to hang on his wall. The problem with that is that in today's newspaper industry, this Hall of Fame induction may be his last.
It's a thankless job in many ways to be an investigative reporter, because the people you're reporting about aren't all that happy to read about themselves in the newspaper, and quite often, even if you get it right, they want to sue you because you got it right. And now a lot of newspapers, they don't want to put up with the legal costs of having an investigative staff and the resources that it takes to get to the truth. And Russell Carollo was the rare person who was able to have the patience, the perseverance, and the talent to go forward and to get it right and to become really one of the most prominent investigative reporters in this country over the last quarter century.